The Red River Farm Network is celebrating the role of women in agriculture. It is our special series that we call Agricult-HER. And of course, we have our sponsors that make this all possible, including the good folks of the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council, Minnesota Corn Growers Association, Ag Country Farm Credit Services, North Dakota Corn Council, and Van On and Company. And very pleased to be checking in with Lori Stevermer, president of the National Pork Producers Council, a farmer from Easton, Minnesota. Lori, thanks for joining us.
Oh, happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Lori, you wear a lot of hats, whether it's farmer, family, you've been involved in the animal nutrition business for a lot of years, and a leader at the national level with a commodity organization. First question, how do you balance all of those kind of things?
Don, I get that question a lot. How do I balance it? And I guess I never think about that. I'm well organized. That's probably anybody who knows me knows that. So I'm well organized. I do have a lot of support from family and friends. I would say in this role as president of the National Pork Producers Council, I elected to do it when my kids were older and out of high school and out of college. So that limited some of the conflicts with events and stuff like that. But, I would also say it's my style that when I join an organization, I commit to it fully. So I may not be involved with a lot of different organizations. But the ones I do get involved with, I commit to fully. So I think that helps provide some of that balance.
Was there a springboard that kind of moved you into leadership, maybe at the Minnesota level and then onto the national level?
There absolutely was. And actually, if I go back, my husband Dale was involved with the Minnesota Pork Board when we were first married, and he served as president of that board for a couple of years, and then he, retired off of it. And I had someone reach out to me and say, "Would you like to be part of the Minnesota Pork Producer Association?" So the other board that dealt with public policy, and I said, "Sure." Having been so familiar with the pork industry. So my springboard was 9 years on the MPPA board here in Minnesota, and then serving 2 years as president. And then, during that time, as it was coming to an end, once again, you kind of think about some national opportunities, and someone taps you on the shoulder and says, "You should run." And so I did. And now I'm finishing my 6th year on the NPPC board.
You're in leadership at a very important time. A lot of issues you're dealing with, whether it's Farm Bill, Prop 12, animal health issues, whatever it may be. It's got to feel like you're drinking out of a fire hose some days.
It certainly does. And those first few months of my presidency, when I'm, talking with our CEO, Brian Humphreys, about these issues, it did feel a little bit like a fire hose. And he would say to me, well, what do you want to do about this? And I'm pretty sure one of my first reactions was like, this is my decision to make. Like, we got all these board members. And he's like, well, no, I need your input. And I don't want to say that we don't use the board and the officer team, because we do, and they're great support. But yeah, some of those decisions come down to you as the leader of the organization. And I would say as time goes on and you get more familiar with the issues and you understand, the working relationships with staff and stuff like that, it gets easier. But I think once again, it's a balance. And I would also say I probably can be attributed to having a pragmatic approach to things. So I think my ability to kind of at times step back a little bit and say, okay, what does this mean? What are some options going forward? Is really helpful in some of those complex situations.
I look at the pork board and pork council, and there's been some tremendous women leaders. A Joy Philippi, a Barb Detterman, the list would go on and on. If I looked right, you've got a 16-member board. You're the only female in the room. Is that create any challenges, or how do you see that?
I would have to say it's just something that I've been used to. Number one, going back to my career in feed sales and being the only woman in the room or in the meeting. So certainly something that is not unfamiliar to me. But I would also say credit to the other board members and the guys on the board there. They are very supportive. before I ran for officer, I really talked to all of them, and they gave me really some words of encouragement, and that is just so important. And I think when we're sitting there as a board, we're not thinking, are we male or female? We're thinking about what's best for the industry, and so that's really important. And yeah, I want to see more women on the board, and that may change this year with our elections, but uh, I think certainly just coming together as farmers first uh, really helps us in our decision making.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't be talking male, female. We should be talking farmers first all the time. But how do we nurture that? Bring more women into that boardroom or leadership level?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know that all of us, I think whether you're male or female, look at it. And I've always said we need a diversity of experiences. That when we're looking at these complex problems and situations and trying to solve those challenges, we need that variety of perspectives. And really, I look back on my career, and it is so rewarding to see more women getting involved. And I think you saw it from kind of the ground up, right? We saw women going to ag colleges and getting more involved with leadership positions at college, and then they got into the working world, and you saw them in more jobs. There were more women in sales, whether it was feed or chemical or whatever, and then we start seeing more women getting involved with boards. And so I do believe that it is changing, and we're getting more balance there. I think also as female leaders, we have to encourage and be supportive to new female leaders, and whatever form that takes, whether it's a formal mentorship, whether it's just saying some kind words along the side. I think we underestimate the power of a kind word and a word of encouragement. I would also say uh, we tend as women to like to compare ourselves to others, and we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't look at somebody else and say, well, they're so good, they got it all together, they're doing this or that, and I can't do that. I think that isn't healthy for us. I think we have to look at our skill set and where we can fit in and make a difference, and just start with the first step and go from there.
You mentioned your involvement in the feed industry. Educate me. What are some of your roles there, and really how has that kind of helped you into this aspect of leadership?
Yeah, I started, I graduated from the University of Minnesota, first as a veterinary technician from Waseca, and then decided I want to get my bachelor's degree. So I went to the University of Minnesota, graduated with a bachelor's degree in animal science. My brother was going back to farm. So I decided I wanted to stay involved with agriculture. Took a job with, at the time, Wayne Feeds in sales there. So I was calling on feed dealers and farmers. And when you look back, I've spent about half of my career in sales. I had a chance to move into marketing in the mid 2000s. So I spent, 15 years or so in marketing. So I moved away from sales, but got into more of the communications, events, messaging. And then the last few years, as part of Alltech's US pork team, I've been in what's called the customer success manager role. So I'm really working with our sales teams and our customers. So when you look back, my career has been sales and marketing. And I think, first of all, that communication and being able to communicate with a wide group of individuals, right? With farmers on the farm, feed dealers, industry people, has been very helpful in this role as I deal with all kinds of individuals. I think also it's made me collaborative along the way. Because whether I was in sales or especially in marketing, when you're working with teams and you're leading teams, that collaboration and really looking at your team and saying, okay, what's your strength and what's your strength, and how do we leverage your strengths for the good of the company or the good of the project, I think has definitely been helpful in this role as NPPC president.
All that collaboration and bringing everybody, all the different viewpoints around the table, it just makes so much sense to be the training grounds for what you're doing today. When you're in a leadership role at something like this, there's always memorable experiences. Take me back. What are some of the things that probably somebody wouldn't think about that you've had the chance to do?
You know, um, Going back a few years ago, as an officer, and we have an officer rotation, so it's vice president, president-elect, president, and then past president. A couple years ago, as vice president, we had the chance to listen to our Prop 12 case being argued at the Supreme Court. So, an amazing experience to be able to sit at the Supreme Court, see all the judges, and listen to those arguments, and just see that whole process. Fast forward to about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I was out in Washington, D.C., testifying at a House Ag subcommittee, and the announcement came from the Supreme Court that went against, the NPPC in our case. So here I am getting ready to testify about, the pork industry in front of the House Ag Committee, and hear all these rumblings. And so that very case that we watched about a year earlier, now we got the results from. So, those have been some memorable big milestones, I would say, along the way. I think also it's the small things. I mentioned getting to meet a number of different people and learning about them. The number of individuals that have come up to me and thanked me for what I'm doing. Thank you for getting involved. Thank you for being present. I couldn't do that. Once again, those words of encouragement are just so golden, because I'm like, how do people know me? And my daughter's like, Mom, everybody knows you. I forget, I'm out there on the internet, but it's very humbling. So to many people that won't seem like a big deal, but to me, those comments from fellow producers that are saying thank you for what you're doing, those are big milestones too.
To do that advocacy role, particularly in public policy, is something that a lot of us need to roll up our sleeves and do. But it's oftentimes out of our comfort zone. How do you get past that, Lori?
The more you do it, the better it gets. I remember one of the first times I was in the Washington, D.C. office, and I had my talking points, and it was awkward at first. It kind of stumbled through it, and it gets better. And whether you're doing it at a state level, a national level in DC, or even, at Farm Fest, when somebody comes into the tent and you start talking to them, it does get easier along the way. So I think we need to keep that in mind. I think also you just have to be authentic, and, don't try to talk about something you don't know about. Number one, it might not come off well, right? Someone will see through you, but then also it feels awkward. I would say also we have to remember it takes time to build relationships, and especially with these our busy legislators. I mean, they're meeting people for like 20 minutes and then they're going on to the next one. So that continued engagement with them, whether it's at Farm Fest, at the State Fair, or, out in DC, that builds that relationship, that builds that comfort level. And so that when you start seeing them maybe the third or fourth time over a period of years, it gets to be easier.
Who have been some of your role models? Who have you looked up to as you've gone along your journey?
Yeah, great question. I think of people in the pork industry that I served on the MPPA board a little bit. I mean, people like Brandon Schaefer, Terry Walters, Randy Spronk. I think of staff members that I've worked with at a Minnesota level, like Dave Preisler and Jill Ressler. All of those individuals I respect their insight, their input, their demeanor, and they've also been very encouraging along the way. I think at a national level, have a lot of respect for my fellow board members, and I don't know if you call them mentors, but I mean, to be able to just sit and listen to Ken Mashoff talk about his story and what he did, and be able to pick his brain a little bit, or even getting to know Rob Brenneman or Dwayne Statler, our president elect. I mean, just listening to those gentlemen and hearing what they have to say and learning from them. I think I take little bits of all of that with me.
Yeah, and those are relationships that you have for a lifetime, really.
They really are. They really are. And I talked about that relationship building, and I think, I think a good example of that is, we have Senator Amy Klobuchar in a ranking member position in the Senate Ag, and we have Representative Angie Craig as a ranking member in the House Ag Committee. Both of those ladies I had a chance to meet a long time ago, or a while ago, let's say, and I respect what they're doing. I think both of those individuals, without getting too political here, I think both of those two individuals try to work across the aisle, as we say. But those relationships took time to build, and now, we're in a better position. I feel like I'm in a better position because I've had a chance to build those relationships over time.
It is such a rare opportunity to have two people in those leadership roles from one state. I don't recall that ever happening before.
I don't either. And I think it's just a tribute to Minnesota and our culture of leadership, especially within agriculture. And if you look at those two ladies, but you also look at just the current situation. I mean, last year, Harold Willey was president of the National Corn Growers Association. We have John Zimmerman now, who I believe is chairman or president of the National Turkey Federation. I mean, we've had a lot of national leadership come from Minnesota here. Terry Walters was our president a couple years ago of NPPC, and I know I'm probably missing somebody from soybeans, but we do have this culture of leadership and building those leaders in Minnesota. I think we really need to take some pride in that.
Yeah, it is important because those aren't easy. We all leave families and our own jobs at home and those kind of things to give back. But it is part of that give back, that serving the greater community kind of thing.
Yeah, which I definitely think is part of our culture as agriculture. And, I grew up on a farm in a smaller community. My parents were involved. My dad was on the co-op board. My mom was in, church boards. And I think those, my parents were good examples of how to get involved and within the community. And I had a great career in 4-H, which, not just taught me skills, but the soft skills and the leadership. And that is really a foundation of what we have in agriculture. And I know agriculture is changing and it needs to change, but I hope some of those core values and that our ability to work together, to support each other, I hope that doesn't change.
I couldn't agree more. I want to be conscious of your time. You've been so gracious. Any final thoughts as we wrap up this conversation and this focus on women in agriculture?
I would just go back to what I said earlier about really just, supporting each other and not comparing ourselves too much, but finding what works for you. And I understand busy moms with young kids that are involved with a lot of things. And I actually look at them today and go, wow, how did you do it? Or how are you doing it? Because I don't know if I could have done all of what I'm doing now when my kids are younger. But I think don't be too hard on ourselves, gives ourselves some grace and find our spot and where we fit in. And you can't see it, but there's a saying on my wall here that my daughter apparently said. I said to her, but it says, "Don't be afraid to be the only person like yourself in the room." And I think that stands true whether you're male or female or whatever your role is. That you have to have courage and confidence in yourself and take that first step, and it will be rewarding. I'm sure it will be.
Well, it's been a fun chance to sit down and visit with you and have this conversation. Thank you so much, Lori.
Well, thank you.
Lori Stevermer with us again, president of the National Pork Producers Council, again from Easton, Minnesota, all part of our special series called Agriculture.